Biography of Idi Amin. Idi Amin Dada, arguably born in 1923 and died on August 16, 2003, was a Ugandan politician and military officer. He was the President of Uganda from 1971 to 1979. Amin was arguably born either in Koboko or Kampala to Kwakwa father and Lubara mother. In 1946, he joined the King's African Rifle (KRA) of the British Colonial Army. He rose to the position of lieutenant, taking part in British actions against Somalia rebels in the Shifta War and then Mau Mau rebels in Kenya. Following Uganda's independence from the United Kingdom in 1962, Amin remained in the armed forces, rising to the position of major and being appointed commander of the army in 1965. Aware that Uganda President Milton Obote was planning to arrest him for misappropriating army funds, Amin launched a 1971 military coup and declared himself president. During his years in power, Amin shifted from being a pro-Western ruler, enjoying considerably Israeli support, to being backed by Libya's Muammar Gaddafi, Zare's Mobutu Sese Seko, the Soviet Union, and East Germany. In 1975, Amin became the chairman of the Organization of African Unity (OAU), a Pan-Africanist group designed to promote solidarity among African states. During the 1977 to 1979 period, Uganda was a member of the United Nations Commission on Human Rights. In 1977, when Britain broke diplomatic relations with Uganda, Amin declared he had defeated the British and added CBE for Conqueror of the British Empire to his title. Radio Uganda then announced his entire title, which were His Excellency President for Life, Field Marshal Alhaji Dr. Idi Amin Dada, VC, DSO, MC, CBE. As Amin's rule progressed into the late 1970s, growing disagreement against his persecution of certain ethnic groups and political dissidents, along with Uganda's very poor international standing due to Amin's support for the terrorist hijackers in Operation Etembe, led to unrest. When Amin attempted to annex Tanzania's Kagera region in 1978, Tanzanian President Julius Nyerere had his troops invade Uganda. They captured Kampala and ousted Amin from power. Amin then went into exile, first in Libya and then in Saudi Arabia, where he lived until his death on 16 August 2003. Amin's rule was characterized by rampant human rights abuses, political repression, ethnic persecution, extrajudicial killings, nepotism, corruption, and gross economic mismanagement. The number of people killed as a result of his regime is estimated by international observers and human rights groups to range from 100,000 to 500,000. Apart from being a military officer and a politician, Amin was an athlete during his time in both the British and Ugandan army. At 6 feet 4 inches tall and powerfully built, he was the Ugandan light heavyweight boxing champion from 1951 to 1960, as well as a swimmer. Amin was also a formidable rugby forward. In 1965, Prime Minister Milton Obote and Amin were implicated in a deal to smuggle ivory and gold into Uganda from the Democratic Republic of Congo. The deal, as later alleged by General Nicolas Olenga, an associate of the former Congolese leader Patrice Lumumba, was part of an arrangement to help troops opposed to the Congolese government trade ivory and gold for armed supplies secretly smuggled to them by Amin. In 1966, the Ugandan parliament demanded an investigation. Obote imposed a new constitution abolishing the ceremonial presidency held by Kabaka King Metusa II of Uganda and declared himself executive president. He promoted Amin to colonel and army commander. Amin led an attack on the Kabaka's palace and forced Mutesa into exile to the United Kingdom, where he remained until his death in 1969. Eventually, a rift developed between Amin and Obote, worsened by the support Amin had built within the army by recruiting from the West Nile region, his involvement in operations to support the rebellion in Southern Sudan, and an attempt on Obote's life in 1969. In October 1970, Obote took control of the armed forces, reducing Amin from his months-old post of commander of all the armed forces to to that of commander of the army. Having learned that Obote was planning to arrest him for mismanaging army funds, Amin seized power in a military coup on 25th of January 1971, while Obote was attending a Commonwealth Summit meeting in Singapore. Troops loyal to Amin sealed off Entebbe International Airport and took Kampala. Soldiers surrounded Obote's residence and blocked major roads. A broadcast on Radio Uganda accused Obote's government of corruption and preferential treatment of the Lango region. Cheering crowds were reported in the streets of Kampala after the radio broadcast. Amin announced that he was a soldier, not a politician, and that the military government would remain only a caretaker regime until new elections, which would be announced when the situation was normalized. He promised to release all political prisoners. Amin held a state funeral in April 1971 for Edward Mutisa, former King Kabaka of Uganda and president who had died in exile, freed many political prisoners, and reiterated his promise to hold free and fair elections to return the country to democratic rule in the shortest period possible. On February 2, 1971, 1 week after the coup, Amin declared himself President of Uganda, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, Army Chief of Staff, and Chief of Air Staff. He announced that he was suspending certain provisions of the Ugandan Constitution and soon instituted an Advisory Defense Council composed of military officers with himself as chairman. Amin placed military tribunals above the system of civil law, appointed soldiers to top government posts and parastatal agencies, and informed the newly inducted civilian cabinet ministers that they would be subject to military discipline. Initially, Amin was supported by Western powers such as Israel, West Germany, and in particular Great Britain. During the late 1960s, Obote's move to the left, which included his Common Man's Charter and the nationalization of 80 British companies, had made the West worried that they would pose a threat to West capitalist interests in Africa and make Uganda an ally of the Soviet Union. Amin, who has served with the King's African Rifle and taken part in the Britain's suppression of the Mau Mau uprising prior to Uganda independence, was known by the British as intensely loyal to Britain. This made him an obvious choice as Obote's successor. Although some have claimed that Amin was being groomed for power as early as 1966, the plotting by the British and other Western powers began in earnest in 1969, after Obote had begun his nationalization program. By 1978, the number of Amin's supporters and close associates had shrunk significantly, and his loyalty from the populace reduced in Uganda as the economy and infrastructure collapsed as a result of the years of neglect and abuse. In November 1978, after Amin's Vice President General Mustafa Idrisi was injured in a car crash, troops loyal to him mutinied. Amin sent troops against the mutiners, some of whom had fled across the Tanzanian border. Amin accused Tanzanian President Julius Nyerere of waging war against Uganda, ordered the invasion of Tanzanian territory, and formally annexed a section of the Kagera region across the boundary. In January 1979, Nyerere mobilized the Tanzanian People's Defense Force and counterattacked, joined by several groups of Ugandan exiles who had united as the Uganda National Liberation Army (UNLA). Amin's army retreated steadily, and despite military help from Libya's Muammar Gaddafi, Amin was forced to flee into exile by helicopter on 11th of April 1979 when Kampala was captured. He escaped first to Libya, where he stayed until 1980 and ultimately settled in Saudi Arabia, where the Saudi royal family allowed him sanctuary and paid him a generous subsidy in return for staying out of politics. Amin lived for a number of years on the top 2 floors of Novotel Hotel on Palestine Road in Jeddah. Brian Barron, who covered the Uganda-Tanzania war for the British Broadcasting Corporation as Chief Africa Correspondent, together with cameraman Mohammed of Viz News in Nairobi, located Amin in 1980 and secured the first interview with him since his disposition. During interviews he gave during his exile in Saudi Arabia, Amin held that Uganda needed him and never expressed remorse for the brutal nature of his regime. On the 19th of July 2003, one of Amin's wives, Madina, reported that he was in a coma and near death at the King Faisal Specialist Hospital and Research Center in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, from kidney failure. She pleaded with the Ugandan president, Yoweri Museveni, to allow him to return to Uganda for the remainder of his life. Museveni replied that Amin would have to answer for his sins the moment he was brought back. Idi Amin has 40 official children by 7 official wives.